morning. It's time now for Storm Watch. And this edition of Storm Watch is sponsored by America Online. Well, once again today, a chance for a few strong and hefty thunderstorms, and those could be dropping some locally heavy rain. And we'll touch upon the fact that there could be some rough weather developing a little bit later. But first of all, let's check out the tropical update. Now, as we check out the big, broad satellite picture, we can see that we have your typical band of clouds, showers, and thunderstorms lined up very close to the equator, right across the intertropical convergence zone. And right now, all is relatively quiet, though, throughout the eastern Pacific. We have no tropical storms, no tropical depressions, but we are watching very closely this cluster of clouds right over here across the Atlantic basin. That is a tropical depression. Here's the latest information that we have. This is the 7th tropical depression of the season in the Atlantic, and right now the coordinates have it roughly centered about 550 miles southwest of the Cape Verde Islands. It's packing winds of 35 miles per hour, and it continues to move off in a westerly fashion. Now, the official forecast today has the system continuing to move to the west, at least for the next 24 hours. And it is over a rather favorable environment, so conditions do look favorable for some further strengthening to be taking place. Again, that is our tropical depression right there. We do see some brighter shades of oranges and reds showing us some deeper convection, so there are some strong thunderstorms firing off right around the center of circulation. At the same time, there's another tropical wave just getting ready to emerge off the African coast. Elsewhere, though, as we can zoom into the Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico, we do see a large band of cloud cover right now. Lots of deep tropical moisture lurking across the northwestern Caribbean and extending northward across the eastern Gulf of Mexico. And what's happening is that there does appear to be a low pressure area just to the north of the Yucatan Channel, just to the north of around the Cancun area, just north of there, a little low pressure system, and also a big broad trough in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere. That too extends from the central Gulf and all the way down towards the northwestern Caribbean. So there does seem to be some unsettled weather conditions here, lots of deep tropical moisture, and that will likely fuel some very heavy rains, we think, today from Cuba and northward towards the Florida Straits, and likewise across a large part of southern Florida. You'll likely get inundated by some very heavy downpours. And certainly that was the case yesterday. We had close to 2 inches of rain for Fort Lauderdale. And for those of you in Miami, you too picked up well over an inch of rain yesterday. So all that tropical moisture again will start to feed northward, fueling more showers and more thunderstorms throughout the day. But we'll have to watch this area closely, as we were mentioning, because there is a low pressure area at the surface just north of the Yucatan Peninsula. And we'll have to watch this for the possibility for some further development. As we head over towards the western Pacific, here too some active weather. First of all, we have tropical cyclone Todd. This is that system right here swirling around. And it does look as if this one will likely be strengthening too, perhaps reaching typhoon status as it moves to the north and the east. At the same time, though, we have Typhoon Stella, which really hammered the Japanese islands. We had some reports of winds between 60 and 70 miles per hour yesterday. So some very strong winds buffeting parts of Japan. And Stella will continue to race very quickly towards the north-northeast. And as it does, it will eventually start to move into some cooler waters. And then eventually it will start to weaken. But right now it's still classified as a Typhoon Stella. Checking out the weather, though, across the lower 48, as I was mentioning a few moments ago, there is the possibility for some strong thunderstorms today. With that tremendous low-level moisture feeding in across Florida, we'll have to watch out for some stronger thunderstorms throughout the course of the afternoon. Also, the weather could be turning rather ugly for the southwest and also for portions of Texas. And unfortunately, these showers and thunderstorms oftentimes do drop a tremendous amount of rain. And with these soaking downpours coming in across Texas this morning, that means more serious problems with flooding. And we have flash flood watches out for portions of eastern Texas and likewise for sections of Arkansas. There's also a front easing its way across this region, and that too will help to wring out some extra moisture from the atmosphere. So on top of the heavy rains that have already fallen, we'll see more soaking downpours later today. The southeast, though, kind of quiet, and most of the west, too, looking rather uneventful this afternoon. So a beautiful day to be out and about around Chicago, Omaha, Nebraska, looking nice. And the weather very quiet, too, for Atlanta, Georgia. Lots of sunshine. So again, no problems on your morning or your evening rush hour. Stay tuned, though. We'll check out current weather and your weekend forecast. It's all coming up.
Wet weather in the Northeast is moving out of many areas. We'll show you when and where skies will clear next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by America Online. The future, now available.
Why is America on America Online?
Email's great.
It's fast, it's responsive.
I just click and I'm there.
I can't even use a copy machine and I can do it.
I love to get instant messages.
They have parental controls.
Tons of free software.
It's the internet and a whole lot more.
We've spent over $1 billion to create a state-of-the-art high-speed network. And now we're... Thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. Heavy downpours continue in South Florida, and we still have flooding rains in southeast Texas. But the big story in the tropics is a new tropical storm has developed. Here's our tropical expert, John Hope, with the latest.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. And yes, indeed, we have a new tropical storm. This is George, way out here in the Atlantic Ocean. And we also have a situation in the Gulf of Mexico that could very well, we think, evolve into a tropical depression right soon, too. Up here, pretty well toward the middle of the Gulf, there's a reconnaissance aircraft out there checking it out, and we'll be reporting what the reconnaissance aircraft finds. The hurricane hunters, the Air Force Reserve out of Keesler Air Force Base. But now let's go back to the East Atlantic and look at the latest particulars on Tropical Storm George, just upgraded from a tropical depression this morning, centered 10.5 north, 32.4 west. That's 620 miles to the southwest of the west-southwest, actually, of the Cape Verde Islands, and scooting right along toward the west at about 20 miles an hour. Now, we believe that this storm is going to continue to move mostly toward the west and get better organized as time goes by. We think it will get stronger. Very possibly it's going to be a hurricane, and we don't know yet whether it's going to affect these islands here in the Caribbean or not. It's still about 2,000 miles away, so we have a couple of full days here to watch that and assess it as time goes by. And of course, it's over 3,000 miles from the U.S. mainland, so plenty of time to deal with that, so we won't worry about that in this part of the world right away. Now, here in the Atlantic, we have a visible picture of this. This is one of the very early visible pictures, and we can see that it does have a very well-defined circulation and moving toward the west. So again, we think this is going to get stronger as time goes by. And we have an infrared picture where we colorize the tops and the center of circulation right in there between those two masses of clouds. So this could be, in time, quite a powerful storm, and it's something that you folks around the Caribbean and even later on perhaps on the U.S. mainland need to be thinking about a little bit. Now, as we take you out in the eastern Atlantic, there's the storm. This is George on the last frame. But notice that we do have another very well-defined tropical disturbance, tropical wave coming off the coast of Africa, and we'll have to wait and see what happens to that as time goes by. Now, here in the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean, the reconnaissance aircraft is right down in this area checking it out. We've got a lot of moisture streaming up from the Caribbean into this system. In fact, let's zoom in on that a little bit here, and we'll get in closer and show you what it looks like. Right in there, and this is where there's some suggestion from the aircraft. We see pretty good southwest winds being reported now by the aircraft, so right in there is where we're looking for a circulation center to develop. So we think the odds are that this is going to be a tropical depression. Later on, I'm afraid, it could be a tropical storm. Hate to say that to you folks in the Gulf of Mexico. Just got through, or not even through yet, dealing with the consequences of Francis because of all the heavy rain that's still falling in portions of Texas. In the eastern Atlantic, nothing to be concerned about there whatsoever, so we don't have to worry about that area. Or Eastern Pacific rather, and we'll take you then way out into the Western Pacific, where we've had Stella move very rapidly into Japan yesterday, and now is moving way beyond Japan, 40 or 50 miles an hour. And down to the south, we have another storm, Todd, which is forecast to become a typhoon as it also moves off toward the northeast. That may miss Japan. We keep you up to date on that as well. Well, now we'll turn you back to Mark, and he'll deal with the severe weather here in the U.S. Mark?
All right, thank you, John. And even as you speak, more flood warnings coming in from southeast Texas, Refugio and Aransas counties now. Flood warnings. This area right here, hard hit with heavy rains this morning. A lot of roads are underwater here, especially in Jackson County, according to the sheriff. Here's our area disturbed weather in the Gulf of Mexico. Did see weak area low pressure here. Hurricane hunters, though, investigating this little blob, as John just told you. As we take a look at the potential for some heavy rains today, scattered storms could dump on you in Texas and Louisiana, and the flood watches continue around Dallas and San Antonio and the Houston area, even though in Houston, looks like the worst, the heavy rain is now slipping to your west. But down the coast here in the coastal bend, around Victoria, it is really pouring, and this is where we're getting those flood warnings. Dallas, you've been hard hit with the heavy rains this morning, and the rain's still in the area. It looks like it's going to be a soggy day here today. Travel will be difficult with all that water. And in Florida, tropical moisture continues to ride up from the south. Still raining pretty hard around Miami and Fort Lauderdale.
Rain expands from Miami to other parts of Florida. An update on conditions there and nationwide next on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This is Singing Bob saying adios. Till next time.
Singing Bob.
Local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Rotating its way westbound, it will be crossing some fairly warm waters, warm enough to support further development, and also an upper air pattern which is still favorable. We continue to watch a couple of storms popping now, and it's going to break a heat wave, believe me. It's going to be well worth it in Philadelphia, Trenton, and eventually around Baltimore. But in the meantime, there is still some real heavy rainfall that is showing no signs of quitting in Texas. We'll show you that with a close-up of Metro Houston coming up. But first of all, our tropical update, and with a look at the tropics, here's Dr. Steve Lyons.
Well, thank you, Bill, and welcome to the Tropical Update. We've been looking at a couple systems today, and we'll start now this evening with the Gulf of Mexico system. We've had a very large but ill-defined low-pressure center out here in the Gulf of Mexico. Really encompasses the northern Yucatan Peninsula, the western edge of Cuba, all out in here. And the hurricane hunters out there, that's the Air Force Reserve, has been out there all afternoon trying to find a closed center on the hurricane scale. And right now we're sort of on the verge of tropical depression, but not quite. Circulation center in the low layers looks like it's somewhere just to the south and west of most of this thunderstorm activity. But you can see there's already a big impact on this, because in the ridge of high pressure just to the east of a lot of thunderstorms over South Florida. As you well know, we've had a lot today and over most of Florida. And there's been quite a bit of strong wind over the Florida Keys as well, and that wind is affecting the entire northeast Gulf of Mexico as a marine hazard this afternoon. Now, if we look a little bit closer, we can see a circulation center is probably generally in this area. But the thing that is probably keeping it from really going quickly, if we look at the upper level water vapor imagery, we see a well-defined upper level closed circulation, a cyclonic circulation. And that is not directly favorable for rapid development. We really need the anticyclonic circulation, or counterclockwise, clockwise flow associated with this side of it. So it's right on the edge of it, and as this system moves out of the way, we could get a tropical depression. So we need to monitor this very closely. We need to stay tuned to the Weather Channel and see what's going on. Pay attention to this dark area out here to the east of the Windward Islands. I'll talk about that in just a second. Now, when we go out here, we see Windward Islands here, a very beautiful day, really not much going on there at all. But out farther to the east here we have Tropical Storm George And we have the latest information on that. It's at 10.7 north, 34 west, or 1,714 miles east of the Lesser Antilles Islands, which are right here. So it's way out still, about 5 days away approximately, moving to the west at 20 miles per hour. But keep in mind, it's intensified just a little bit, up to 45 miles per hour now. We expect the trend to continue in a slow but steady intensification trend over the next 24 to 36 hours. There's really not much in the way of detrimental effects associated with it, other than that dry air that we saw in the water vapor imagery. The upper level shear is going to stay relatively weak, and here it is on a little closer scale. Circulation center is associated with the western side of the eastern area of deep thunderstorms, which is about right in there. But right now it's so far away from anything. Worry about the ensemble of the circulation, not exactly where the center is. Another tropical wave moving off the coast of Africa here. Right now not producing much in the way of thunderstorm activity, but still pushing to the west. We'll keep an eye on that one as well. Now in the Pacific, we've had that trough of low pressure sitting over Central America, and you can see a lot of thunderstorm activity in there and not much in the way of development in the Pacific. And of course the Pacific hurricane season is on the downslide. It's been on the down since late July. And as we go out to the western Pacific, way out there, you can see here's Japan up here. We had our one storm, Stella, moving very rapidly to the northeast, becoming extratropical. Now we have Tropical Storm Todd has become a typhoon. Winds minimal typhoon strength, 65 knots, 75 miles per hour. It's forecast to continue to move to the northeast, although right now it's taking a little turn to the east. We'll monitor that for you as well. Well, let's get back to Bill and that rain in the northeast and other weather across the country now.
All right, Steve, thank you very much. Again, the rain in the northeast, I want to emphasize, is very isolated, but there could be a couple of storms breaking that heat in Baltimore and Philadelphia before the evening is out. Also, flood watches in Texas, San Antonio to southwest of Houston, around Freeport and Victoria. Be on your guard here, and looking at that radar, look at that rain. We have flood warnings now in DeWitt and Lavaca counties and Jackson counties in Texas, around Victoria and Palacios. More storms along the Sabine River, lessening around the Dalles area, more developing west of I-35 in the hill country. One other area, very wet yesterday and today in South Florida, that rain heading northward.
We're watching two systems in the tropics, including newly named Tropical Storm George. Get the details, plus the national outlook on Weather Center after your local forecast.
Sports cars are great if you're into leather and chrome. But let's hope you're not into wood.
Pretty much activity until the latter half of August. That's when Bonnie developed and eventually raked the North Carolina coast.
Now the center of circulation with Bonnie is about 45 miles to my southwest, and that means whatever is left of the eye wall is just hammering away. We are easily 60 to 85 miles an hour here, and there has been a lot more damage in this subdivision that I'm in than what we saw yesterday as a result of the wind shift and even the strength of the wind.
To date, we have had 7 named storms. 3 of them became hurricanes, and one of them, Bonnie, developed into a major hurricane. This map shows the tracks of those 7 storms. Alex, Bonnie, Danielle, and George formed in the Atlantic. Charlie, Earl, and Francis developed in the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane specialist John Hope says the number that have made landfall makes this season unusual.
Considering the fact we're only in mid-September, we've actually had more landfalling tropical storms and hurricanes than what we normally have. The whole year, the average tropical storms and hurricanes combined are a little less than 3, and we've already had 4 landfalls, so that's already somewhat above average.
The hurricane season officially runs through November, although historically the number of storms drops off sharply by the end of September. For the Weather Channel, I'm Mike Bono.
And the activity in the Gulf of Mexico is having an indirect impact.
Welcome to Storm Watch and the Tropical Update. During Storm Watch, which will follow the Tropical Update, we'll be focusing on where storms are likely across the country and where the rainfall will persist. But in the Tropical Update, we're going to be talking about Tropical Storm George, as well as a disturbance we're concerned about in the Gulf of Mexico. Let's begin the Tropical Update, and we'll start off with that disturbance, which has not attained tropical depression status yet. It is possible, however, as we go into tomorrow, that it could easily attain tropical depression status, especially if this trough or this area of low pressure, which by the way is a cold core low or cold core trough, especially if this gives way, because this is the factor that's keeping this system from organizing to any degree farther than it has at any point in time today. In other words, the center is still pretty ill-defined right now, but with this trough giving way, and it may very well do so, this could not only become a tropical depression, it could have the potential of becoming a tropical storm. But first it has to become a tropical depression. Right now, one thing for sure, it is sending heavy amounts of rain into Florida. That's expected to persist going into tomorrow. But here's the storminess across the greater Antilles, Cuba, getting into the Dominican Republic, Haiti, we've got storminess, and the winds could be quite gusty along especially the eastern half of the Gulf Coast tomorrow. Another factor has been the wet weather across Texas. Now, not only, I suppose, from that system in part, but there's been an actual trough, an actual low across Texas itself, and that's helped to pump in the moisture. We've seen something on the order of 3 to 4 inches of rainfall in southeastern Texas. And in Florida, look at this rainfall amount in Mangrove Swamp. As of course it's coming down on a swamp area, generally speaking, but Homestead itself has received 4.5 inches of rain, but according to this legend, we've seen 6 to 7 inches in the extreme southern tip of Florida because of that tropical disturbance. And here's another view of it right here. If there was a center, it would be in this general area, and as it continues to churn, we're seeing the breeziness and the winds continuing, and this is expected to pick up, especially along the Florida coast, getting to about the Louisiana coast tomorrow. But this could become more organized tomorrow if this trough begins to dissipate or give way. Let's take a look at the big picture. Here's that disturbance over the Caribbean. And also, while it is stable generally across the mid-Atlantic region, we do have a concern, namely Tropical Storm George. And this has the great potential of becoming a hurricane in time. Right now, it'll deal with some very stable air, and if it can make it through that, and it has done so far, it's intensified considerably over the past several hours, it could become a hurricane. Right now, the winds are at 50 miles per hour around the center, moving toward the west at 20 miles per hour. Still almost 1,600 miles to the west of the Lesser Antilles, these islands here. So it's still a few days away, 3 to 4 days away from the Lesser Antilles, but it could very well stay on this track, this same latitude. And so if it does so, it has a chance of affecting the Lesser Antilles, but that's still some days away. Right now it's looking very healthy, and you can still see it. Very well-defined tropical storm. There's nothing to shear it, no adverse factors to tear it apart, so it looks like there's no reason really of a major significance for this to become torn. Now, as it moves into that stable air, it could weaken somewhat, but it's been holding its own so far. There's a look at another wave we'll be watching carefully off the west coast of Africa. Nothing going on in the eastern Pacific of note. The storminess along the ITCZ, or the Intertropical Convergence Zone, has tapered off considerably. Just a little detour here. This is a low that's going to be scooting into the northwest. You can see how big that is, bringing some cooler air to the northwest. As we take a look at the western Pacific, eyes now are on Typhoon Tide, which is a Category 4 typhoon. This could attain super typhoon status overnight going into tomorrow. Will it touch Japan or reach Japan? That's unknown as it moves toward the northeast. We'll be monitoring this very carefully. Stella has become extratropical. There's a look at our frontal boundary. To the north, some dry air. To the south, we've got some moisture, and that moisture streams into Florida and Texas, and where it's not raining, it's quite muggy. Out west, we have some mountain showers across the San Juans. There's our wet weather. We've had flooding concerns for several counties in southeastern Texas tonight. The rain has dissipated somewhat in many areas compared to earlier, but still coming down pretty hard to the west of San Antonio, so our flood watches still continue across southeastern Texas, and the wet weather in Florida persists too. We'll have more on this coming up during Weather Center after your local forecast.
Whether close to home in the Gulf or a little further out in the Atlantic, we're closely tracking 2 tropical systems. The latest update plus your forecast ahead on Weather Center.
These days, it seems like everybody's got a Cherokee or an Explorer. Me, I like to stand out a bit.
That's why I drive a Subaru Outback.
With a big cargo bay and all-wheel drive, you get all the sport utility you need. But with the smooth ride and better